Here Comes the Guillotine contains offensive language, mature content and adult themes. It is not suitable for a younger audience.
This is a Global Player original podcast.
Hello and welcome to Here Comes the Guillotine. I'm Frankie Boyle and I'm going to be talking to Susie McCabe and Christopher MacArthur Boyd.
Lunch there, you were saying...
we need to stop having those huge lunches.
We need to stop having we call it the French method.
We need to bring in a wee sandwich.
The French method of having one large meal at lunch, which I don't even think French people do.
They do, yeah.
Do they?
Yeah. A very kind of croissant breakfast.
Yeah.
A small dinner, maybe even cold, in the middle of the day, down tools, and you fucking have a massive extended lunch. In French schools, they have 7-course meals. In the worst French schools.
In the worst French schools. I was once on holiday in south-west France, and I went into a restaurant for my lunch, and there was like a whole site of guys that had just came off a building site, all just sitting having a little couple of bottles of beer, couple of courses, all very relaxed, some wine, and then they went back to work. It's like things that cannot happen in Britain is giving those men bevy at lunchtime. Buildings will fall down, people will be murdered with hammers.
Imagine that was your campaign, though, that you're going to make society more French. Our builders need to start bevying.
This is what I voted for Brexit for. Put a cork in the Channel Tunnel. I don't want to be French. I'm British. Oh yeah, it'd be all that. Could you imagine? The idea, like, that we've still got baguettes and croissants in this country is still blowing people's heads off.
Do you feel the Channel Tunnel played a role in Brexit?
The Channel?
Yeah, so that there was now then this hole into Britain that was being fucking shafted by the EU, and subconsciously it became a Freudian thing.
We feared the tunnel being filled by migrants. Is that what you mean?
Or longed for it, secretly longed for it.
Secretly longed to be pumped by...
That's why they let stop the boats. Get these guys through the tunnel. That's what...
I don't think it is the Channel Tunnel.
That's the sort of thing you used to get on like late night BBC Two. They'd have a show where people just talk shit about. I don't know. I've no idea, Jared. Possibly. What happened to those shows, man?
That was New World Order. I don't think it was the tunnel. I've got a wee theory in this. Do you want to hear my theory?
Go for it.
About how Brexit happened. I was driving about doing gigs, and this kind of came to me, that wherever you go, right, so us coming from Scotland, we go down the M6, and wherever we come off, we go into a dual carriageway. Doesn't matter where we're going, we go into a dual carriageway, and then that dual carriageway eventually leads us into most English cities, right? Whatever one you're on. And you go through that dual carriageway and everything starts to look the same. It's the same houses, it's the same shops, it's the same bars. There's so many like industry-owned pubs, whereas we've got quite a lot of independent pubs up here. So most boozers are different. But every restaurant's the same, everything all starts to look the same, and it's been so homogenised, probably since like the 1970s, but certainly during the 80s and 90s, that areas have lost their identity, that they are no longer known for what they were known for, because everywhere just looks the same. It's the same shops, it's the same shopping centres, everything. There's nothing really quite distinct about any English city. So if you look at Scotland, every city's different. No cities are the same structurally, anything like that. They're
all fucked in different ways.
Yeah, they're all fucked in different ways. Listen, I'm not painting a great picture, but yeah. Whereas I think a lot of it's to do with that, and the fact that I always feel, oh God, this is going to get me threats. I feel as if English identity is something that's never really truly existed, because I think it's ultimately British identity, because they don't see the difference, where every other part of the UK has their own identity and has their own things and their own kind of flag and national anthem. And essentially the English national anthem's God Save the King, which isn't really about a country. Or you can reverse that and look at it the other way and say it's exactly about a country, because that's what that country's all about, that pyramid class system that they're kind of obsessed with. Whereas
I agree. I mean, like, so they only really bring back George's flag in Euro 96.
Yeah.
Because before that it's all Union Jacks and stuff. But I'd go further and say there hasn't really been Scottish national identity. This will get me threats. But, like, there hasn't been that before Britain either. Because, like, the idea of Scotland as a unified whole with a single identity comes from round about the Victorian era. And it partly comes from the novels of Walter Scott. So Walter Scott starts writing all these novels about Jacobites and fucking kilts and all that kind of stuff. And Queen Victoria loves all that. It coincides with them finagling money out of the treasury to buy Balmoral, because trains come along at the same time. So all these things come along at the same time. And they have parties for Victoria in Edinburgh, and they go, fuck, what's Scotland then? And they throw on a kilt that's the regimental evening dress of, like, Highland Regiment. And that's where that look comes from that you see at every Scottish wedding. That was just a thing that they went, oh fuck, we're going to have to say we dress in something. Let's pick that one. It doesn't look like any kilt any Jacobite would have worn.
No. That's also a thing.
Fantasy.
Like, if I think about my gran wouldn't have particularly identified as Scottish. She would just have been British, but that's also a post-war thing and the kind of glory of World War II victory. But whereas now, I think when I talk to younger people, they seem to have a real self-confidence about being Scottish. Do you know what I mean? And I think they feel their identity more than, like, what I was growing up. But even stupid things in the news, like, they never use the Scottish titles of the royals. Yeah. You know, they never say, oh, it's the Duke of Rothesay. They'll say it's whoever the fuck that is, right? But
apart from the old Duke of Edinburgh.
Apart from the old Duke of Edinburgh.
They should have been using his titles in hell. He's the Archduke of various realms of pain.
Avernus. Yeah.
The Archduke of Assassinations. Allegedly.
In another dimension, he would have been to the Queen something like her chariot or something, if we could understand his true form in the hell realm. Do you remember when, like, they found him, like, crashed his, like, 4x4 upside down?
Yeah.
And it was like 94?
Yeah, but I was like, that's probably how you drive in his dimension. You just ride along on the roof.
If your wheels are made of flesh and the landscape's made of flesh, that probably seems quite natural to be upside down. I'm excited for a lot of those older people to die. Do you know what I mean? Like baby boomers, I'm excited for that age group. To not specific ones, obviously. Well, people are lovely, but as a group, that I'm really looking forward to that.
They're quite an entitled group. They're quite an entitled group, I think, baby boomers. But they're also the ones moaning about future generations, going, oh, they say that they're riddled with anxiety. They're like, no wonder, having you as parents. You fucking sociopath.
Is there this thing? I sometimes think being oppressed sometimes gives you more empathy. So if you're that younger generation, you go, oh, I can see why my parents, having come off the back of the Second World War, are arseholes, blah, blah, blah. Whereas being an oppressor kind of radicalises you a bit quicker, because people like a bit of sadism and they like someone to blame and they like scapegoats. And I think that's at the root of a lot of human problems, is the fact that being bad, actually, you get into it a lot quicker.
It's a bit more addictive. Aye.
You could have group therapy with Hitler now. He would be like nodding. He'd be like, yeah, you know, there's something to that.
Do you know what? Yeah, fair enough. You know, like I was out of line. You know,
on the nose.
Do you remember there was a show just on the subject of evil psychopaths? Richard Branson did a show. Remember, like, The Apprentice was the biggest show in the world when Trump started it, right? So they did a kind of knockoff version called Rebel Billionaire. It was on like Sky or something. So it's Richard Branson. He's Rebel Billionaire, right? And he's like taking all these apprentice candidates, like
that sounds terrible,
parachuting and all this kind of stuff, right? It didn't make any sense. But there's a bit where he goes to the Grand Canyon or something. It's a massive massive canyon, and he's got like a thing that looks a bit like a portaloo, just a steel cube on a bungee cord, right? And he fires it off the edge of the canyon, and it knocks about a bit, and he goes, which one of you is going to get in that and, you know, fire off the edge of the canyon, right? And they're all a bit like, it's like, you know, if you want to be my apprentice, you've got to blah blah blah. And so one of them goes, me, I'll do it. And he goes, if you'd have got in that thing, you would have died. You're fired. And you're just like,
What's the point?
what's the point?
What is the point? Do you ever watch The Apprentice?
I used to watch the Alan Sugar one a wee bit.
So, I've been watching this series. Do you watch it, Chris? No.
To watch TV.
It's mental. Like, it's actually mental how bad some of them are. And you're like, if this is what they've chosen, what did they knock back? That's what I want to see.
But that's what they're looking for. So when they're doing the interview, they're like, this fucking numpty. Wait till we get him trying to design a breakfast cereal.
Yeah, they're fucking... But also, I kind of watch it from behind a cushion. So my wife, like, she really likes it. She just kills herself. And now she's just started laughing at me watching it, because I start off going, oh, for fuck's sake. And then I go through that Jesus fucking Christ stage. And then I come out the end of that with just a cushion over my face going, I can't watch these people. The cringe is too much. It's too much.
Also because we don't really have management. So it's about laughing at clueless management fannies.
Yeah.
So all these people have to work in the NHS with some fanny that doesn't know what they're doing. And they're like, there's one of them.
Aye.
Right, and they can watch it. Like, whereas we're like, oh my God, why would you be like this?
This is awful. Why would you choose this life? Yeah. Yeah. It's grim. The Trump one was mental as well, though, when he was doing it. But that's what put him into the public consciousness. Now he's going to be an in-jail president. Grim.
Who would you like to see as president?
I'd like Biden's dead body.
Yeah.
It would do less damage.
Bernard. Not Sanders. Weekend.
Well, I have a theory that Biden could win by appealing to both he could get votes from both the living and the dead. So all these people, like Civil War soldiers and railroad tycoons and that from America's past, would turn out and vote for him, like the ghosts that help Aragon. The Siege of Gondor. But I'm intrigued at his spectral form running again.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Mm.
He done a wee walk out of a plane recently. Maybe not recently, but I seen a video of him coming out of a plane and he was walking like C-3PO. His body's just fucking clunkily, mechanically. I mean, he's fried.
Yeah.
What was that thing he was saying about the Earth Angel? He was...
That's-
Yeah, see that? He was like, oh, Earth Angel. And it seemed like he was...
It sounds like a song for Grease.
He must be seeing angels and all that stuff, like his mother's voice, like all kinds of things.
Do you think that happens when you're on your way out?
Would you think
that
angels
happens?
come and get you? Probably not the type of angels you'd want. Probably the biblically accurate angels where they've got 1,000 eyes and 20 wings in a circle and all that type of stuff, rather than Cupids and Gabriels and
I
stuff.
don't trust whatever God's running up there, partly because Abraham and Isaac, a story I refer to often, but God says to Abraham, sacrifice your son Isaac. And then when Abraham goes to actually sacrifice his son, God goes, no.
What are you
Right?
doing?
But wouldn't the test be that you wouldn't do it?
Yeah.
Like if you weren't completely mad, you wouldn't do it. But the right thing to do is to be prepared to kill your own son. What
God
kind of
is a
God
fascist.
this? What God
He
is
wants your
this?
unbending wish. He wants your unbending actions.
Or is it like
in
the
his word.
Matrix where God's like, your son isn't real? Do
Aye.
you think this is a son? Do you think this is
just a
nothing?
simulation.
Then he comes down and gets crucified and he's like, this is nothing. This is fuck all.
Yeah, you think the big test would be, well, I asked you to kill your son and you knew not to do it because you're a good person.
Yeah, well,
Here's
in
a
any
Twix.
fairy story, in any fable, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
But God's like Richard Branson.
You're fired. You hear that, Abraham? You're fucking fired.
You've got to always be slightly cautious of anyone with an island. I think it's just a good rule of thumb. You're like, oh, you've got an island, okay. You know?
Yeah.
Guard up.
I mean, I think we've learned recently that men with islands isn't always a good thing.
No. I think they should
Big
do.
Jeffrey.
You could see this. You know, they're always trying to mash up TV shows. Tony Robinson's Time Team with a scuba diving element where they investigate around Epstein's Island.
Yeah.
And like, I found a Pokemon sticker. I found a FEMA. Like, they just haul in a net every week.
See
We
who's
have a
down there.
look. Yeah.
Oh,
Probably
Imagine you'd escaped from a sex shop and swum to land and it was Epstein's Island.
no,
out of the frying
no.
pan and into the air fryer. You know.
That island will have sharks round it as well.
Cum addicted sharks. They've got a taste for it. People think they like blood, but they love cum.
Jesus.
They must be looking at Biden and go, how much more can this guy take? Because they're obviously firing him full of like Adderall and they've got a cocktail. They're like, how far do we push this in an election?
Why did they keep him on? Surely they didn't go, we've got nobody else, because they must have somebody else.
Anybody else?
Then that'll, like, they're literally a corpse.
The big chat is it's a 70-something versus a 70-something. So it's the oldest presidential...
But they're nearly 80.
Aye, just two old white men battling it out.
I mean, you know, it's the age thing, isn't it? I mean,
But it's also the genocide thing.
Yeah.
well, both of them.
He's like a proper
Yeah, he
Ray
loves Israel, doesn't he?
Harryhausen creature, just, but also genocide. Come on, man.
It's crazy watching videos of him from like the 90s and 80s, and he looks exactly the same, but his hair's jet black, but he's still really into genocide. And you're like, he's been into genocide for ages.
Aye, he's a
This
big
isn't
fan.
like, oh, he's turned 80, a screws went loose. Here's him when he's got hair like shoe polish. And he's bald. And you're like, wait, what? How have you went from being bald with black hair, having thick hairline with white hair?
Whereas Donald Trump's hair. I mean,
You
where
know,
do we
whatever.
even start with that? Weave.
Nobody's talking about Biden's hair. Nobody's talking about it.
Do you remember when Rudy Giuliani done that press conference and the dye from his hair started to run down his face?
Yeah.
What a moment for humanity.
It's very similar in have you ever seen The Fifth Element?
No.
Gary Oldman is the villain in it, and he starts bleeding for his head, and it looked like that.
Maybe it was blood.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't hair dye. Maybe his blood's black.
Maybe Rudy Giuliani has black blood.
Black blood.
Well, maybe Biden has black blood and he's never been young, but he just in the old days would say, beat me around the head a little before I go out and do the speech. And now he's too old to have his head tenderised.
Yeah.
If he gets out there.
Who do you think's going to win it?
Trump.
But he'll be in jail.
How can people go out and vote for Biden? How can you summon up any enthusiasm? He can't campaign, you know? And obviously, if your pitch is, well, I'm not as bad as the worst person in the world, Donald Trump, that's such a low bar. You're like...
They don't really have anybody else, do they? Who did they have running? They had
Well, they could have. It's just that they shut down all debate. So in the last, and when they chose Biden, Bernie Sanders being the front runner,
Yeah.
and they just had a stitch up where they said everybody else stand down. All of our voters will vote for the same person, and that'll be Biden. And it was just decided.
right.
Because they thought Bernie Sanders was a communist because they believed in, like,
Medical.
healthcare.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You hung out with him a wee bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I did an interview.
What was
Good
it like?
guy.
Yeah, it was really nice. And did it in Brighton. And went, hello Bernie, or whatever. And someone was like, what about Jeremy Corbyn? From the audience. And he was like a bit startled. And you're like, this is like an 8-year-old guy who's had like a heart operation. Will you people just never stop cry wanking about Jeremy fucking Corbyn?
Well, they pro Corbyn.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole thing in British politics is the dominant style across everything is sentimentality. Doesn't matter who you are. Right wing, you're longing for some lost thing. Left wing, you're longing for some conditions that created you that no longer exist.
Yeah.
You know, nationalists, you're longing for some Scotland that never existed, or some England that never existed, or whatever. Just the whole thing is just daubed in the emotion that is the least suited to action. Do you know what I mean? If you've got trainings in boxer for a fight or something, you're not like, let's get out some old pictures of your dead mother. You know?
Let's watch Rocky. Let's watch Rocky. Rocky will put you in the mood.
That's great if you're right wing because you want the status quo maintained. You don't want people doing things. But if you're left wing, you don't want the whole thing saturated with an emotion that makes people inert.
It's fucked into it with Bernie because it's like he was like the good option, but he is also 80 and mostly dead.
And not really pro ceasefire in any meaningful sense in Gaza. So
Really?
he's like, they got to get Hamas and yeah.
Then they had that guy who's coming to the Senate who wears like shorts and hoodies and stuff and believes in socialised healthcare. And they're like, this guy's good.
John Fetterman. He's like the senator for Pennsylvania.
But he's a fucking wingnut as well when it comes to Israel. They're all free.
Who was that?
It's just this guy who wears a hoodie and he's like, I'm just a normal guy who I'm a senator, and he's shite as well.
Amazing. Who was the guy who was lying about everything? Santos, was it? Who was the guy?
El Santos, the Lucha Libre wrestler.
I knew this would get to this.
George Santos.
George Santos.
And he ended up being told he couldn't be a senator. He was just
How?
mental. He was just making up mad stuff.
Right. Was he the wee guy who adopted somebody and he was shagging him? Oh, right, okay.
To be honest, I thought that was Woody Allen. It's Woody Allen. Why'd
You should do that with the Alan Clean.
Okay.
Woody Allen?
No, you.
Oh, yeah, I can't do it. What's your favourite Woody Allen film?
I don't know, actually.
I think they're all
I
good.
can just say I rewatched Annie Hall recently with a view to stealing its structure. It's something I'm working on.
You working on a 70s style rom-com?
With Dan Keaton, actually.
About time.
But it seemed to me that Annie Hall is a really different film from what I thought it was, because like it's kind of about him being really threatened by Annie Hall and like him being a relentlessly mirthless arsehole, and her wanting to go to evening classes and improve herself and smoke less dope and things like that, and he's very threatened by and critical of all these things throughout the film. And actually it's kind of a very self-critical, whether it's accidentally self-critical or not, I don't know, film about this terrible man wanting to cling on to this woman he doesn't deserve.
Yeah. I mean, even Manhattan, which is the one where he has a girlfriend in the film, and it's kind of like based on him. And you're like, well, you know, it's good that you know that that's bad, but you are still doing it, brother.
She's 18 in the
She's
film,
18, is she?
but she was 17 in real life.
Oh.
So woody.
Yeah,
There's a bit in
he
the-
was very self-critical, but it's very. He never says he loves her in it. He never says I love you. He always says I love you, but he's quite
There's an
kind of got an
interesting-
inability to love.
Do you remember the start of Annie Hall? He comes out and he just does a bit to camera, and he goes, you know, it's like the old joke about I wouldn't want to be in a club that would have me as a member, and which some people attribute to Groucho Marx, but it's actually from Freud, and he gives a citation and blah blah blah, and he does a wee bit. And I sort of wondered, well, why has it got that structure? Then later in the film, he's in a scene and he turns to camera and he says, it's like the old Groucho Marx joke, I wouldn't want any club that has me as a member. And you're like, did you just add that bit on at the front of the movie because you'd used the wrong quote and you're such an intellectual narcissist that you couldn't have someone go, oh, that's actually Freud?
Yeah.
So you've just changed the structure of the film. and stuck yourself on at the start, given the correct thing as a footnote almost. I think that's what happened. Otherwise, why would you do it twice?
He is a narcissist. Complete narcissist. What age is he now? But 90?
He's about president age now, isn't
President, he could probably run.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Trump versus Woody Allen.
Wow.
I should be the president, I was in this cafe and an old lady said, it's such terrible food in such small portions, And that's what's wrong with healthcare. I could be great. This is bad, Pat, but I like doing it. What if we
He must be about nearly 90.
For someone who's so anxious, he got up to a lot.
I don't know how anxious he was.
Yeah.
I think he
If
might
you
have
really,
been.
I maybe shouldn't fuck my stepdaughter.
I'm worried about having conversations with people, That's why I'm only fucking people who legally belong to me. All right. Nice.
And we'll do a disclaimer at the start in the style of Annie Hall to say that she wasn't legally adopted by him.
Right,
And it'll be fine.
It was an illegal adoption, which is so much better.
Amazing.
Fair play to Woody, but good guy, good oboe player, and a fine stand-up. I love Woody Allen.
Even now?
I dressed up as him for Halloween when I was 18.
And today.
And today.
And tomorrow, probably.
It's just such an easy thing where you're a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old wee specky guy, and you're like, this guy was kicking about in the 70s who was quite anxious and specky and seemed to get his hole quite a lot, so you just wear a tweed jacket and hope for the best, and then next thing you know.
Really selling yourself here.
Well, showbiz, isn't it?
I saw something one time. It was this guy trying to trap paedophiles on YouTube, and he's way weirder than the paedophiles. He's like a kind of fresh-faced young guy of about 30, and he shaves and stuff and puts shorts on, and he goes and meets with some beast who takes him up into some woods, and he's sort of doing a really high-pitched voice, and he's going, that rock formation along there? I know what that's called. And the guy's like, okay. He's going, do you know how I know that? Because I studied geology at college.
And that's how he catches them?
That's how he turns it.
I like that.
Wow.
It was bleak.
I have a degree.
Do you remember there used to be all those videos going about of people like hunting down paedophiles? They used to pretend they were 13-year-old girls online and then arrange to meet them. And then these brutes would turn up like, all right, I'm your 13-year-old girl you've been talking to online, you pedo. And they would film it all and then put it up online. You're like, I don't know if this is the best way to be catching these people, guys.
It really coincided with the rise of Facebook Live.
Oh.
Facebook started the live streaming thing where you could just go live at any time, the same time period that people started hunting pedos.
I don't know that you're really going to cure paedophiles by flirting with them. No. That's sort of the last thing they need.
Yeah.
Further riled up.
What's your move against them then?
Move against them?
Yeah, how do you think the judo toss?
I've never given it much thought.
No. Most people
I'm in
haven't.
show business, I should.
Yeah. Surrounded by them. Yeah. And, it just seemed like, where do you think that came from, Susie, the rise of the pedo hunter? What do you think that was about?
I think people were just fucking annoyed that,
Fed up with the pedos.
yeah, living in their areas and just on a wee tag,
That's when they started getting islands. They're just like folk are getting
getting too suspicious.
Live,
Do you know what I'm afraid of?
Yeah.
Neighbours.
Can I tell you about my taxi driver yesterday? Oh my God. So I went to get the train was cancelled, so I had to get a taxi up the road. And I get in the car, and the guy was like, oh, yeah, where are you going? aye, that guy there, he was talking to me about politics, and I said, mate, politics isn't my bag. Literally a second later, he went, what'd you make of that Nicola Sturgeon deleting her WhatsApps? And I was like, I was like, aye. I said, well, whatever it is. Aye. And I tell you, I'll not be voting SNP or Greens or Labour or the Tories. And I'm thinking, you're going to vote Liberal Democrat? Like, who in Glasgow votes for a Liberal Democrat? Like, no offence, Liberal Democrats, you're lovely, but there's where it ends.
It's a red flag, isn't it?
Aye. And then the rest of the journey's like, and that whom's a useless. And they're just like, oh, right, okay. Aye. And that Anna Sarwa. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a theme here. The theme would appear to be women and men with brown skin. You are not a fan of, right? So I think what we're getting to here is that you're just a misogynistic racist. No tip. No tip.
That he wasn't just talking to some guy. The other guy was in the same boat as you. He has that conversation with everyone. So he'll go, just talking to that woman there. I'm not into politics. They
just
always
all
have
the
some
time
workaround for how they can just start talking about that.
He's like, this LEZ zone for the environment, putting 300 taxis off the road. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. I was like, why is that? Aye, well, because, you need a cleaner taxi. And I was like, well, it's clean air. Aye, it's the Scottish Government. I mean, it's pretty much every British city. It's got them. See, I travel up and down the country and everywhere else got them. Aye, we had them first. I was like, no, we didn't. We're probably one of the last to actually get them. No. And you're just like, right, so it literally doesn't matter what happens here. You're ultimately going to blame this.
The taxi should be exempt from it, though, as public transport.
If they want.
If they want, yeah.
If they want. I'm not really bothered, but the whole point was he was just horrible. And I was like, I need to stop getting a taxi, man. That's how I brought my car.
It's getting to be an older guy's job now. It's getting to be a middle-aged guy's job.
What did it used to be?
Oh, it'd be more of a mix.
Right, you don't see a lot of young dudes.
Yeah.
All the young dudes.
There'd be more women.
Yeah.
More,
probably a safety thing as well. Probably a safety thing for women to be driving about picking up guys is probably not the safest occupation.
That's why there's bulletproof glass and
they'll have a chib in their cab. Yeah. That would be a good TV show where they fight each other with
taxi chib.
Yeah. Or just, you get members of the public like gladiators and they're like, you're going to fight a taxi, so if you don't know what he's got, what he's holding, who it is, kind of thing.
Brilliant.
And you just flag it down and start some beef with him.
Is there a series of animal themed taxi drivers who are like riggers the way they have gladiators? Like there's a guy called Wolf who's fucking powerful and you need to go against him.
But yeah, every 100th taxi is like Drew McIntyre or something like that. That's the special.
What if you get to pick your taxi depending on the advert that they've got on their cab? You get to pick the opponents.
A la 3-2-1. You've gone for it. You're like, well, I see.
He will not remember 3-2-1. There is no way.
3-2.
I've said, "Be dusty bin." Amazing.
Can do
There's a meditation on the meaninglessness of language, because whatever their hints suggested, it could sort of be anything.
I think you could just pick it. I'm going to go for this guy. He's got a yellow taxi and he's advertising something. You're like, that's the guy. You're like, oh, he's advertising the Yellow Pages. He's not left that taxi for 20 years. I'm going to take that guy.
The taxis have a thing where if somebody's, violent in the back, it goes out, it's like a panic button, and it goes out to all the other taxis. So every other taxi that's not with somebody in the back then comes, you'll just drive to a bit of spare ground with this guy kicking fuck out your taxi in the back. All the other taxis will pull up and everybody kicks fuck out the guy.
That's where we want to get. That's what we want to do. We want to get two wrestlers in the back of that cab. And then when all the taxis come, that's when the fun starts, man.
It's like the Warriors.
It's a slightly different show. Yeah.
It's kind of like Battle Royale.
Yeah. It's like a prank show.
It's a bit Mad Max though, and it would two wrestlers are just getting out the back of a taxi, and all the other taxis are like, oh, I knew I should have went for my chips.
I like the idea that there's two wrestlers in the back. It's like a tag team, and then they need to take on like 40 guys.
They come out either door. Amazing.
One of them's on the roof rack.
Ripping it off.
Yeah, it's quite cool, isn't it? You know, it's quite an individualistic job being a taxi driver, but it's nice that they have this kind of community version of violence, you know?
I don't know if it's nice.
It's sweet. Makes my heart sing. The idea that, I'm out here by myself, but if I need my pals, and it's not necessarily people that you know, it's just we all have the vested interest that people should be kicking fuck out of taxis.
But that's why they're all dying of heart attacks, man. They're all fighting folk on the race ground of an
Fighting
evening.
wrestlers.
Pumping them as well, probably.
Probably.
What if they're pressing the button and somebody's like, oh, that guy's pressed the button, and the other guy's like, he's a bit of a wanker. We'll give it 10 minutes. We'll give
He's
it 10
always
minutes.
pressing that fucking button.
Aye. Give it 10 minutes. Let him get a bit of leathering, but we'll make sure he doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
Serpico.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was
I
against
love
the
that
corrupt
movie.
cops, wasn't he? But then they were like, well, what do you think that's going to do for us? You
It's a true story. He went deep.
Uh-huh.
Went deep as a jewel thief. Wasn't it? Aye, I like it.
I don't think I've seen it. I've only seen the bit in Rushmore where they kind of remake it. It's like teenagers in a school make a kind of high school play version of Serpico. So I've only seen that. I haven't seen the actual.
Hold on.
Yeah,
What?
it's a film where about this wee guy called Max Fisher, who he's like a teenager prodigy theatre maker, and he makes versions of like Serpico and Apocalypse Now for his high school musical, basically.
How much of the budget did the drama department have?
Oh well, it's a private school, isn't it? That's what.
Of course it is.
That's
Of
what
course
I've came
it
here
is.
to talk about is, you know, private schools and the unfair bias that you get.
I talk about that in my show, don't you worry about it. I've got it covered for all three of us.
There's a thing, isn't there, where like urban dystopia largely comes from, there was a period around about the late 70s, early 80s in New York where there was a huge budgeting crisis, and that created things like there was no garbage collections, and there was subways were really unsafe, and like anytime you see a movie now, and in fact most depictions of Gotham since then would be like all stuff from that. People in a subway late at night getting menaced by a gang. They're all from this really specific kind of
Time.
period of like 2 or 3 years.
It's like the opening
In the
credits
history
to
of
The Equalizer.
Yeah.
What was the name of that lad who shot a guy on the subway? He was like an avenging angel or
Well,
something.
there was that guy.
Bernie.
There was a guy who they said, "Can you give us $5?" And there was a bunch of them. He said, "I've got $5 for all of you," and pulled a gun and shot them all.
So I'm thinking
But
about.
several of them in the back. So it seemed like not great. And then they had these things like the, what were they called? The subway angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they would go and like guard subway carriages and
They had
stuff like that.
berets
Like a
on.
kind of, they were kind of slightly camp militia.
Yes.
Public
Fabulous.
transport militia. And,
New York vested men with berets.
But that period of like history has, for some reason, completely indelibly marked the public imagination.
I think that is because a lot of the TV programmes round about that time were based around New York, and I think that was the image that was just constantly projected. So I can certainly think about that time, like the opening credits to Cagney and Lacey, Hill Street Blues, all this kind of stuff of this kind of real inner city menace, The Equalizer, like we were saying, like, you know, the woman in the lift and the guy getting on getting in and stuff like that, and it was all kind of there's a lot of sex crimes and a lot of robberies and stuff, and the graffiti on the subway, that was always very visible in those programmes as well, and the kind of portrayal of certain types of people who lived within the city. And I think it was projected so much onto television, and quite iconic television programmes at that time, which at that time, you know, people had 4 channels and everybody watched all those shows. So it's probably just came all the way through. Do you know what I mean? Like generationally.
But why? It's just an accident of history, really, that it isn't Glasgow 1988.
Could be Glasgow now.
And all those films are just like a corporate mascot for the city, a garden festival where a guy gets his leg blown off in the opening fireworks ceremony,
Yeah, interesting.
and pubs starting to do nachos.
And hot nuts.
Hot nuts.
Hot nuts was a thing. Sahara hot nuts.
Yeah.
Hot nuts.
We were stuck in Mumbles recently outside Swansea, and we watched The Batman.
Wait, they're the Michael Keaton.
No, the Batman, which is the we had a Robert Pattinson season where we watched a few films all starring Robert Pattinson.
The one he filmed up at the Necropolis.
Filmed in Glasgow and Liverpool. And when that came out, there was so many articles from American film journalists like, we have never seen a Gotham so grimy and dirty and broken as this, because the last couple of Batman films were all filmed in Toronto and Chicago, which are, you know, quite bad for crime, but they're nothing like post-industrial Glasgow. People were like, oh, everything just looks like it doesn't work and it's disgusting. And it was like, well, yeah, you know, you should come see it in real life. It's shite.
We got like stand in for like Philadelphia in World War Z.
Yeah.
A city that Bruce Springsteen was singing about. That's how bad that town was doing.
They,
Blew up the chicken man in Philly last night.
I'd love to go to Chicago though. One of my favourite films was filmed in Chicago. The Blues Brothers.
Right.
Great, love it. And probably the first kind of comedy film that I watched like on my own. But do you know that Chicago is actually the town plan after the Great Fire? Do you know it was based in Glasgow?
The grid.
Well, yeah, and the fact that it had a river going through it and it docks.
Right, okay.
So they were like, right, how do we rebuild this city? What's the closest city we've got to it? And it was Glasgow. Yeah. And I feel that Chicago has won that fight very convincingly.
Yeah, it's sort of Gotham is Glasgow in a way, because Gotham in the comics is Chicago.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, after all that, and Chicago's actually got a bigger Jewish population than New York, because when they were rebuilding the city, as European Jews were kind of arriving, and it was like, right, we need migrants. Where do we need them to work? We need them to go to Chicago. We need them to help build up Chicago, and that's where a lot of migrants get sent. So it's actually probably traditionally a more diverse city than New York.
Right.
And then that's where we got hamburgers from. Apple pie, apple strudel.
Germany.
Yeah.
America. Germanic society. Have I gone on this rant before?
No.
Really?
Don't think
I
so.
talk
Not in
about
the
this
pod.
all the time. America makes a lot more sense when you realise it's essentially a German society. They almost chose German as their first language. Loads of German people emigrated there. I would argue all the normal ones. And loads of stuff.
But then in the 1950s, all the bad ones.
Yeah, they had a sweep up later. But lots of the stuff they have, the weird brass bands they have at like high school graduation or just marching through the town. The towns you go to where they go, we're home of the aubergine or whatever, you know, and they have a massive like boosterism kind of thing about their town. That's all German. The work ethic is German. And they're like white German Protestants. Who are their biggest movie stars, you know? Sandra Bullock. She's German, right? She speaks German. Tell you who else?
Wait, she speaks German?
She speaks German because she's a German, yeah? And I tell you who else? Bruce Willis. Yeah.
He's
you know,
not German.
and that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're expressing ideas of how to be a new German in cinema. So like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, he's saying, look, you don't have to be like the old German, like Hans Gruber, who wants money, who wants actual physical things. The thing that you want is what the new American German desires. Sensation. Why would you want these pieces of paper when you could be throwing people off buildings and having a really weird psychosexual drama with your ex-wife and so on. You know, he's saying enter the spectacle as an American German. And the reason Die Hard is a Christmas film is a thing people miss. Die Hard is a Christmas film because it's the story of Alien as told through the eyes of the alien. So he's crawling about the vents, killing everybody in the building. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So there's actually the music. When the last baddie rises up in Die Hard, you know, they've not killed one of the henchmen. He rises up and the black cop shoots him, yeah? They use the music from Alien. It's this exact same music from Alien because it's the story of Alien. How does that make it a Christmas film? Because Alien is the story of a virgin birth.
I feel as if I've just watched a 10-minute reel on TikTok and I'm like, I am never getting that time back.
I feel like I've found the YouTube channel of
your dreams
man who has killed himself because nobody understood him.
It's the Germans!
You don't understand the face huggers where...
But it's the same with like all your kind of second generation American Jews. Like there were so many of them went into like Broadway and stuff, and it was like this collaboration between homosexuals and Jews who then ultimately wrote some of the best Christmas songs that we've ever had. It was that kind of Bavarian Christmas influence.
Yes, and their Christmas thing, also German.
Christmas is German. The tree, Prince Albert brought the tree over.
Who was the biggest star throughout my childhood and teenage years? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wasn't even an actor. Most famous actor in the world. And he was sort of German.
I was Austrian.
I know, but that's pretty much German.
It was so...
It is, though.
It's German. What was going on with that period of time where, like, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger were all, like, action stars, but they would never bring up the fact that they had weird voices. They were, like...
Oh, in, like, the late 80s, that would have been, wouldn't it? That would have been, like, your late 80s.
Your Kindergarten Cop, so it's kind of early 90s.
Kindergarten Cop. You know? Where was that filmed? Where was that filmed?
Where?
In the most German city in America, where a whole bunch of Germans have gone and settled. It's a Kindergarten
What
Cop
city is that?
I'd have to look it up.
Right.
But look up the history of that town because it was totally settled by Germans. And the movie Kindergarten Cop is just basically a template for how to be a German.
Kindergarten. Kindergarten's a German word.
Exactly.
Kindergarten, the garden of the children.
Oh!
Wow.
So what we're saying is that the Allies won World War II, but Germany have really won it because they've infiltrated America.
They infiltrated America long before World War II. And in fact, they had the Bund at the start of World War II, didn't they? They had to go and round up and crack all these heads because there was so many German sympathisers in America.
Wow. I mean, you would think America
Tell me how German that town is, Christopher.
It seems pretty... We've got something called the Astoria Megler Bridge, which sounds pretty...
Have you looked up the history of the town?
Okay, I'll read about the history of the town in a wee minute.
I think it was a fur trapper.
There was a lot of fur trapping going on at the time.
That's where the Germans went. And they went, let's build the most German place possible, and then in a couple of 100 years, we'll do a movie about how to be German.
It's not
a German name, and we'll have a German bloke in it.
Yeah. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. I know he was a big Republican and stuff, but I just think he's an inspirational figure.
Was he not quite gropey?
He was shagging a few housekeepers.
Was it consensual?
Well, there's always a power dynamic, isn't there?
Okay.
But
I don't know that you can fully consent to someone who's physically powerful. Is that? It's like saying, can I consent to the sea? Do you know what I mean? You just dive into the roaring swells and then go, I didn't agree to this.
Where you put your trunks on?
Be quite a defence in court. You cannot consent to sex with me. Think of the sea, Your Honor.
Does one consent to life? I did not ask to be born, yet I am fucked by it. got on there.
I nobody ever mentioned their accents.
It's always like Jean-Claude Van Damme is like a father of two who works for the police in Pennsylvania, and he's like can barely speak English. You're like, what's going on here? Why is he doing the splits all the time? This father of two. My dad never did the splits the entire time I knew him. Know him? He's still alive. You know, I don't hang out with him all the time. Maybe he is doing the splits
It
as
ain't
a
over
16-year-old
yet.
man.
That's all I'm saying.
Horrible to go home.
What about Splitsvember? Do you know what I mean? Instead of all these like growing a moustache or not drinking or whatever, you just work on the splits. Oh yeah, you're going to sponsor me for Splitsvember.
There'd be a wave of men rendered infertile.
That might be a good thing.
Torn in half like a wishbone from a turkey dinner.
And that is how we deal with population control.
But that's what we raise money for impotent men with major ball injuries.
Akimbo
Yeah.
thigh sockets.
I'm raising money for ball injuries during Splitvember.
Yeah. Splitsvember. You just get two folding chairs in your office and you would just try for weeks. And I think you would deserve more money than somebody who just didn't shave their top lip. You know?
Fair.
Splitsvember.
I don't know how much effort it takes to grow a moustache.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I don't know how much effort it takes to do the splits, so I feel that it would be wrong for me to comment on this.
Jean-Claude Van Damme made it look so easy, but there was always a bit in every film where he'd sleep with some lady and then she'd wake up in the morning like, and she'd look over and he's like in a thong doing the splits. Yeah, just like, what's he doing? Go get her a coffee or something, make her a breakfast.
Yeah.
Doing the splits.
That's weird. And I don't know how many women would find that attractive in a man.
It's not really the quality you're looking for,
Like-
unless you are really into pegging, I suppose.
I think that was the subtext.
Subtext is peg me, because he represents effete Europe,
Yeah.
France, and so on. Britain,
Belgium.
villains, correctly, in my opinion. And, the goodies are Germans.
Wow. It's been a very American episode.
Or German episode,
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it.
Do you
That's
think
something.
Arnold Schwarzenegger would be a worse presidential candidate than either of the two people who are actually going to do it?
Sadly, no. Like, used to look back, like in the late 80s, right? Gore Vidal said, the next election would be between General Norman Schwarzkopf, who led the First Iraq War, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, which he'd say is a joke. And now you're like, God, Schwarzenegger would be like way better.
Great. Yeah, compared to Biden or Trump.
Imagine when he gets to Biden's state of mind and then just comes out thinking he's Robocop. I would love that.
You're like, you were the Terminator. He's like, no, Robocop.
Just, I'm not, I'm Robocop.
If he wasn't.
Yeah.
Obviously not. Where did I get Robocop from?
In The Last Action Hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger is like an actor, but then he comes from a film into real life, but he's a kind of Schwarzenegger. It's great. There's a guy with a fake eyeball.
Charles Dance.
Charles Dance, yeah. Really good.
Charles Dance. He was also in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Charles Dance, he played the dad. He's been in quite a lot. Old Charlie boy.
I've
You'll
read
s-
people say those villains aren't because they're English, it's because they're intellectual. Do you know what I mean? And that's what you're supposed to be afraid of. People who,
know
think
more
too
than you.
much. Whereas the heroes are pretty instinctive.
Right. Right. So it's the knowledge they've got the fear of.
It's a good book by Chuck Klosterman called I Wear the Black Hat about villainy. And it says that a villain can't be stupid to be a villain. You can have evil, stupid people, but a villain has to know what they're doing is wrong and then do it anyway because it benefits them in some way. So you have to have George W. Bush wasn't a villain. He was terrible, but he was too daft probably. Whereas somebody like Scar from The Lion King, he had a degree of intelligence, and obviously he had
And
enough
what sort
to.
of accent did he have?
He was an English man.
He was
Well,
English,
lion.
even though his brother
Yeah.
was American.
Quite a cruel nickname for a deformed lion. Call him Scar. No wonder he was such an asshole.
I didn't like Black Panther in that it had the plot of The Lion King, essentially, and I felt that was racist.
But the plot of The Lion King is Hamlet, isn't it?
Well, is it?
Is it
Kind
Hamlet or
of.
Macbeth? It's one of the Shakespeare plays has the thing of like the dad who dies, so the son comes in and his uncle takes over.
Well, why
Is
would
that not
be
the royal
Hamlet?
family?
'Cause that would be like, that'd be a lot of things. That would be
It's monarchy.
Oedipus.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have been a terrible Lion King plot.
It's just a lion shagging his lion mum stuck in a washing
Clawing
machine.
his own eyes out in the final number.
Aye, aye.
Hakuna Matata.
What a wonderful It's defo Hamlet. Is it Macbeth? I don't know. What one's that? The Shakespeare thing?
I don't think it's really that tightly Hamlet because, like, Hamlet's dad doesn't get trampled to death by buffalo. He's already
wildebeests.
dead at the start.
Right. The Lion King, man. It's good.
I'm just trying to think of more German stuff to know everybody.
Sausages.
Oh, whoa, don't get me started on that. Hot dogs, which were called Frankfurters, but they changed it,
Yeah.
you know?
Hamburgers.
hamburgers, apple strudel, apple pie. I'm totally on board with this.
It's hard to argue.
And then they went back and done the clean-up in the 1950s, late 40s, 1950s. The Americans.
Operation Paperclip.
They're so racist that the Nazis looked into the Jim Crow laws and said, this is good, but it's too extreme.
Wow.
Yeah, do you know this?
No?
The Nazis looked, as they're casting around to formalise their philosophy, at the Jim Crow laws in America, and they said, well, we can't have, so Jim Crow was the one-drop rule, which meant if you had one drop of black blood, you were black. So if your great-great-grandfather was black, you were therefore black. And they went, well, we can't have that. We can't say if someone's great-great-grandfather was Jewish, they're Jewish. It's just not going to, it's just too much.
We are blood scientists, but
Yeah, it was too racist for the Nazis. Much as they kind of liked it.
I'm sure they were like, yeah, you're taking that too far. Wink, wink.
It was the anniversary of Malcolm X's death yesterday. And there was a quote doing the rounds, which was, Malcolm X says something like, I can't feel any mercy or compassion for a society that crushes people and then punishes them for not being able to stand up. Mm-hmm. That's the quote. And I was like, I think it's almost the opposite of that. I think it's a society that crushes people and then punishes them for standing up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, like, the moment, if you go off and die in your fucking house and fucking, struggle through all the stuff they put you through, they'll leave you alone. But the moment you stand up, the moment you start organising a union or...
A protest or anything.
And where's he shot? Malcolm X, he's shot at the... it's for African-American unity. Because the moment you start coming together and resisting stuff, that's when they crush you. They're quite happy with you being crushed.
Yeah. And it's such an individualistic society that they're just pitting everybody against each other, and we're so polarised without people going, well, I don't agree with you in everything, but I agree with you in quite a lot, so why don't we try and come together and find a middle ground and try and direct change upward, whereas instead we're just all rolling about in the sawdust, scrapping with each other. I believe in this, you believe in that, you're wrong, I'm right, and there's no anything, so we're power. It's just slipping away, and we can't bring any form of reasonable change and that's how they're just going to crush us.
What you're describing is the loss of solidarity, I think. The idea of solidarity.
Like with taxi drivers. The solidarity that comes with knowing, hey, somebody fucks with me, let's go to that bit of spare ground. Maybe they're two wrestlers, maybe it's an old lady who's confused, but we will kick fuck out them.
Why are these guys Mexicans wearing masks? I don't know. I'll hit the button anyway.
Next thing you know, you're being hurricaned. Over.
A couple of banditos.
Yeah. Solidarity's brilliant. I'm happy with that. The American episode about New York and stuff. And
I think there's some interesting information pops up in these things sometimes.
yeah, people learn a
People
lot
like
about Germany. Should do more Malcolm X quotes and
One a
correct.
week?
I like
Aye,
that you
one
were
a
like,
week.
Malcolm X said this, he's just died and he said this. He's wrong. Here's what's actually true.
No, he wasn't wrong. It's just
Fucking dead. He got shot fucking 2 days later.
Yeah.
So how fucking right was he?
Yeah.
You know?
it's just inverted now, isn't it? It's all shit. It's all a way to shit.
People say that in the X-Men, Professor X is Martin Luther King, but Magneto is Malcolm X.
Confusing to call him Professor X then. Pretty much the most confusing thing you could have done.
Yeah, that was a weird move.
Maybe that was the switcheroo.
Well, it was I was talking about that recently because it was like X-Men was, when in the 60s, it was a metaphor for the civil rights movement. It was these people are different. They're being persecuted for being different. They're mutants who can shoot lasers out their eyes, but they are different. They're persecuted for that. Then when they made the films in the 2000s, talked to Ian McKellen and he was like, you know, there's going to be a bit where the mutant comes out to his family and they're like, oh, could you just try not being a mutant? And he's like, that's not really how it works. So it became a metaphor for the gay experience. Whereas now, I was saying a lot of very right-wing people are into the X-Men, and it's because they see the X-Men as being about what it's like to be a white Nazi, because you're like, we are the next perfect step of human evolution, but we're being persecuted for being perfect, and that's how a Nazi would perceive reality. It's a good story.
I am very hooked into the gay experience. What a description. This is how I'm going to now say I live my life.
I'm
But
actually living the gay experience.
I'm actually living the gay experience. It sounds like a gay bar in Blackpool, but I am fucking all in. Just be like, so Susie, yeah, I'm married to my wife. It's very much a gay experience. I love that. I love that. I love that.
If you take the piss.
No, I love it.
Also the idea of like
Love it.
you're sympathising with the oppressed by making a metaphor where they are a mutant.
Yeah, a dangerous mutant who could end the world. Like, half of the X-Men could all end the world if they just figured out, like, oh, I can turn oxygen into ice. The world's covered in oxygen, let's just kill everybody now. We're a new ice age. But he's too busy fucking, you know, skating about.
Living the gay experience.
Who's cleaning
was
up
getting
after that guy? I know this is true of a lot of superheroes, but who's cleaning up after that ice guy?
Yeah, Mop Man.
Philida, man. And if Philida, if you want to sponsor this podcast,
Currently, no sponsors,
Currently no
no
sponsors.
takers so far.
at the time of recording
At the
this,
time of recording,
Bank of Scotland has decided not to associate with us after the X-Men are Nazis routine.
imagine Germany just steps in, the state funded.
I'd love a state-funded German podcast.
Thank you for getting the word out about Americanization.
Thank you for
Frankie.
giving us Austria.
Come to the Euro, see what happens. You'll be in Cologne and you'll be walking about and
You're right. We're going to get sponsorship when we're in Germany. That's
walking
what we're
about in
trying.
like NASCAR jackets covered in sponsors.
Amazing.
We have to do it in German accents. That's their only stipulation.
So good.
Have you heard about the stuck stepmom genre of pornography, Frankie?
Bible John.
What would they call him in Germany? Bible Schwartz or something?
Schwartz?
I think that's
Sus.
Yiddish for penis.
Schwartz?
Which I get, you know.
Yeah, good gear.
Johann?
Johann, Bible Johann.
Johann, what?
Oh, were you running through the song from the storyteller?
It's like,
There was this kid show and it would be like, I am the storyteller. In England, I am John. And then he'd be like, in Holland, I am Jan. And all this stuff.
In Germany, I'm Johann.
Johan.
In Glasgow, I'm a serial killer.
Bible Johan.
Amazing.
The gay experience lives on.
I love that. Honestly,
Well, that's the gay experience, isn't it?
I'm going to put it on my Insta bio. Gay experience.
A forerunner of the gay experience.
Yeah,
Sounds like an escape room.
fucking tremendous.
The escape room is you leave the closet and head off.
Aye. Do you want to be chained to a radiator? Or tied to a bed? Or just take a bottle of poppers and dance to Donna Summer?
That would be good, Boy George running in an escape room.
Based on his flat that one time.
You just come to. Your friends have bought you the thing, you just wake up in there.
Yeah, it's a bit more expensive than most escape rooms because they have to abduct you. That's it this week for Here Comes the Guillotine. We'll be back next week with more anti-authoritarianism and chummy laughter.
You can get all the episodes of Here Comes the Guillotine on Global Player right now. Search for Global Player on your App Store or go to globalplayer.com.